my God, why have you forsaken me?" You know the translation, but you have probably never heard the pulse. Matthew and Mark did something strange. They didn't just translate this sentence. They preserved the sound first, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, and only then gave the meaning beneath it. The translation is accurate, but it is thinner than the original. The Greek gives you the meaning. The Aramaic gives you the pulse. 5 words, 5 layers. And by the end, the sentence you thought you knew will not sound the same. 5 Aramaic words. That's all this video is. 5 words, spoken or invoked at one of the most studied, most repeated moments in Christian history. The translation you know is accurate. I'm not here to tell you it isn't. But the translation is thinner than the original. Every translation is. The Greek gives you the meaning. The Aramaic gives you the pulse. And today, for the first time, probably in your life, you're going to hear the pulse. 5 words, 15 minutes. Let's go. You know the sentence. My God, why have you forsaken me? Spoken from a cross, recorded in Matthew and Mark, preached from 10,000 pulpits, quoted in every theology of suffering ever written. One of those sentences people keep returning to, century after century, because it refuses to stay simple. And here is something hiding in plain sight, something that has been sitting in the gospel text for 2,000 years that almost nobody ever stops to look at. Matthew 27:46, Mark 15:34. Open either gospel. Right there, embedded in the middle of the Greek text, something unusual happens. The writers don't just translate, they stop. They write the original Aramaic sounds out phonetically, letter by letter, in Greek characters. Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, the sounds first, and only then, underneath, the translation. Think about what that means. These were writers in Greek, for Greek audiences. They had every reason to translate and move on. Every other sentence in the gospel, they translated. This one, they stopped. They carved the original Aramaic into the manuscript first, and placed the translation below it like a footnote. Why? At least to me, that choice says something. You do that when you believe something in the original sounds cannot be fully carried by the translation. When you need to say to the reader, the translation is here, yes, but go back. Listen to the sounds themselves. There is more in them than I can give you in Greek. I can't pretend to know everything Matthew and Mark intended, but I can say this. They did not let the sound disappear, and they left it in the text for anyone willing to go back and listen. That's what we're doing today. 5 words, and what they carry. The first word is the address, and it changes everything before the sentence even begins. Matthew writes Eli, Eli. Mark writes Eloi, Eloi. Both reach back to El, the ancient Semitic root for the divine, shared across Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. The same sound that flows through Allah, through El Shaddai, through Allah, the Aramaic name for God that Jesus spoke every day of his life. But he didn't say just El. In Aramaic, this is grammar, not interpretation. Adding the letter Yod to the end of a noun creates a possessive. El is God. Eli, in its fuller Aramaic form, Elahi, is my God. Not the divine in the abstract. Not God as a concept. The one I am in covenant with. The one bound to me. The one I know, and who knows me. Douglas-Klotz, in Prayers of the Cosmos, calls this covenant language the specific grammar of address used in the Aramaic spiritual tradition for the most intimate possible bond between a human and the divine. Now, here is what the translation compresses. The translation gives you, my God. It's accurate, but it doesn't tell you what my meant in that language, in that tradition, in that breath. What it meant was, I am not calling into a void. I am calling to someone I am in relationship with. The pain, yes, the pain is real. The anguish is real. But it exists inside the bond, not outside it. It is the cry of a son to a father he cannot see. not the cry of a man abandoned by a stranger. The translation says, "My God." The Aramaic says, "The grammar of covenant, intact even here." And honestly, this is where the sentence first started to sound different to me. Code 1, Elahi, the address of intimacy, spoken first before any other word. The second word is where the sentence shifts direction, and the shift is invisible in English. Lema. Every Bible you have ever read translates it as why. And that's correct. I'm not disputing it. But here is what Aramaic does that English simply cannot. In the Semitic languages, words carry a field, a range. English compresses a field into a point, one word, one meaning, fixed. Aramaic holds the whole range open at once, and Lema lives in a space that includes why, backward-facing, asking what caused this, but also reaches toward what, for what purpose, in what direction. Rocco Errico, an Aramaic scholar who trained under George Lamsa, one of the only native Aramaic speakers in the modern era to translate the entire ancient Syriac Bible into English, spent decades on exactly this distinction. In the Semitic framework, why looks behind you. For what purpose looks ahead. One question faces the past, the other faces the future. English has one word, why, and it collapses both directions into one. Lema holds both open, and listen to the difference that makes. A man crying, "Why did this happen to me?" is a man looking backward. But a man asking, "For what purpose is this still unfolding, even now, even here?" That is a man still oriented forward, still searching, still inside a question that has a future. That difference may sound small on paper, but when you hear it inside the sentence, it changes the weight of the cry. The translation gives you one direction. The Aramaic carries two. Code 2, Lema. Not only why, but perhaps toward what? A question that may still be facing forward. Now we arrive at the word I want you to hold longest, because this is where English starts to run out of room, and it has been failing you every time you've heard this sentence. Sabachthani. The root is Shbaq. The translation, "You have forsaken me," is correct. Raymond Brown, in The Death of the Messiah, 2 volumes, Doubleday, 1994, the most exhaustive academic study of the Passion narratives ever written, examines this root and does not dispute the rendering. In this context, Shbaq means to abandon, to leave behind, to forsake. The translation is accurate, but here is what English will never show you. Open the ancient Syriac Bible, the Peshitta, used by Aramaic-speaking Christian communities in Iraq, Syria, and Iran for 2,000 years. Find the Lord's Prayer. Find the line, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." The Aramaic word for forgive in that line is shbuk, same root, shbaq, the verb of releasing a debt, the gesture of letting go. In English, forsake and forgive are completely separate words, different etymologies, different histories. They have never touched each other. In Aramaic, they come from the same place. I want to be precise because precision matters here. I am not telling you forsaken secretly means forgiven. It doesn't. These are different applications of the same root. The way release a prisoner and release your grip are different acts, but the same underlying motion. That's the point. In the language Jesus spoke, the word for being released and the word for releasing others lived inside the same root. They were understood as related gestures, 2 directions of one motion, letting go. English cannot give you that. English splits them completely and places them in separate rooms that never meet. Aramaic keeps them in the same root, and in that root, the man crying Shbaqtani from the cross was using the same foundation he gave his disciples when he taught them Shbuklan, forgive us, release us, let go. The translation gives you the skeleton. The Aramaic gives you the breath. Code 3, Shbaq, to forsake, to release. In Aramaic, far closer to forgiveness than English will ever allow you to hear. Before Code 4, and this is the one that reframes everything you've just heard, I want to say one thing directly. This channel is not here to argue against 2,000 years of faith or scholarship. The people who translated these words worked with care. They carried something fragile across centuries of war and empire and loss and handed it to us intact. What this channel is here to do is go back to the original sounds, the ones Matthew and Mark preserved in Greek gospel text, the ones that were always there, waiting for a listener willing to go one layer deeper. If that's why you're here, subscribe to the Ether Scroll, turn on notifications. Because what comes next is the piece that most people never reach, and it changes the entire picture. Here is the context that puts everything together. Jesus was not speaking spontaneously from the cross, he was quoting. Specifically, he was quoting the opening line of Psalm 22. Across a wide range of New Testament scholarship, Raymond Brown, John B. Meyer, N.T. Wright, scholars from very different theological traditions, this connection is widely recognized. The Hebrew original is Illi Illi Lama Azawtani. Jesus echoed it in Aramaic. This is one of the clearest literary links in the Passion narratives. Once you know that, a question opens up that almost no one asks. In first-century Jewish tradition, Brown documents this carefully. Quoting the opening line of a psalm was not just reciting a verse, it was invoking the whole text. The first line was a key, a signal, for a listener who knew the Psalms, and many present at that crucifixion did. Hearing that first line activated the entire arc of the psalm in their minds. So, what does the full arc of Psalm 22 actually say? It begins in darkness. And the darkness is not poetic, it is precise. The suffering in those opening verses maps onto the Passion narrative with a specificity that is, honestly, difficult to look away from. The mocking crowds echo verse 7. The parched throat and exhaustion resonate with verse 15. The divided garments recall verse 18. Brown catalogs every correspondence. They are real. The anguish at the start of the psalm is not minimized. It is raw. But Psalm 22 does not end at verse 1. It does not even end in darkness. Verse 24. He has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help. Verse 27. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to God. The psalm that opens with abandonment ends with, the cry was heard. This is not theology imposed from outside. This is the structure of the psalm itself. Mizmor, its title, means a sacred song. But what the psalm does architecturally, as a text, is travel. It is designed to move. From the darkest possible opening, through the full weight of suffering, to a destination of trust. A destination of, he turned toward me. He listened. The silence broke. And Jesus pointed to that entire arc from the cross, with its first line. For anyone listening who knew the Psalms, the destination was already implied the moment the first line was spoken. The arc was already in motion. The answer was already on its way, inside the text being invoked. Code 4, Mizmor. Not a frozen cry, a moving arc, from darkness to hearing. And Jesus pointed to the whole arc with 7 words. The 5th word is not in the 7 words spoken on the cross. It is at the end of the psalm those 7 words were pointing to. Near the close of Psalm 22, at the place where the ark finally lands, the Hebrew reads, Ki Anah, because he answered, because he turned toward, because the silence ended. Anah. He heard. He responded. The cry was received. For a listener who followed Psalm 22 all the way to its ending, this word was always waiting. It was built into the text, and it was present, structurally, implicitly, the moment Jesus quoted the first line. The answer was already declared inside the psalm being invoked. Now let me bring all 5 together, because this is where the full transmission arrives. Elahi, my God, the grammar of covenant, the address of intimacy and bond, spoken before any other word. The pain is real, but it exists inside the relationship, not as a severing of it. Lema, why, and in the Aramaic field, perhaps also, toward what purpose? A question that may still be facing forward, even here. Shbaq, to forsake, to release. A root whose range in Aramaic holds forsaking and forgiving in the same origin, far closer together than English has ever let you hear. Mizmor, the psalm that opens in the dark and is architecturally built to end in, he heard. The full arc, invoked with its opening line, Anah. At the end of that arc, already there, already waiting, he answered, 5 words. And held together the sentence that 2,000 years of translation has handed to us as the cry of abandonment opens into something more complete, more precise, more alive. The translation is not wrong. It is compressed. The Greek gives the meaning. The Aramaic gives the pulse. And Matthew and Mark knew the difference. That's why they stopped in the middle of their Greek manuscripts and carved the original Aramaic sounds in first, before the translation, above the translation, as if to say, the translation is below, but the sounds are up here. Go back, listen. There is more in them than any single language can hold. They were right. There was always more, and it was always in the text, waiting. I want to leave you with one question I haven't been able to let go of since I went through all of this. If Jesus chose Psalm 22 deliberately, if those 7 words were the opening of a text whose destination is Anah, he heard, he answered, the silence broke. Then what exactly was he transmitting to every listener in that crowd who knew the Psalms? A cry of despair? Or a complete map from the darkest possible human moment to the place where the cry is received, compressed into 7 words that opened an entire psalmic world? We have been hearing one layer. There were always more. The cry was real. The darkness was real. But maybe the words were never only darkness. The original layer, beneath the translation, the breath beneath the skeleton, the pulse beneath the meaning. Subscribe to the Ether Scroll. Turn on notifications. We are always headed one layer deeper.